lives supplying content to Netflix and that's. Did you get that on camera?
Get that. Hello and welcome to another Telecoms.com podcast, which will be our last of this year. So it's extra special, and to signify just how special it is, we've got a special guest, Ed Barton from Ovum, who is you're a sort of veteran of this podcast, aren't you? You've done a few now.
Done more than a couple, I think.
So yes, and of course we have Jamie. Now it should be said that Jamie and I are both hanging a little bit today, because we went out intending to just have a cheeky couple, and it all came to a head at about 3 in the morning or something, didn't it, Jamie?
Something like that. Definitely self-inflicted.
We were led astray by an industry figure, but I'm going to be discreet and not mention who they are, but you know who you are. Thanks a lot. Okay, so what are we going to talk about? We're going to start by throwing the ball in Ed's direction, and just saying what in the world of electronic entertainment or whatever it is that you cover. So that's the first thing we're going to speak about, and then we're going to chat about. It just happens that in the last couple of weeks we've had our most read stories of the year, so it seems quite appropriate to talk about them. One of them makes reference to some mishaps that Huawei and Ericsson have had, and another one makes reference to a trend of digital platforms blacklisting certain producers. So those are three things. Turn those into short little headlines if you can, Pierre.
Sure.
So I'm going to start it off just by throwing the ball to Ed. I'm going to Ed.
Oh, wait.
Oh yeah. Oh, the listening and all that. I know. I didn't do any of that at all when we shot it in Lisbon, did I? So if you're listening to this on SoundCloud or on iTunes, you can watch it on the site or on YouTube or on Facebook. Right. And if you're watching, you can listen to it and all that jazz. Okay. Are we good now?
Yeah.
Okay. So Ed.
Yeah.
You're an analyst.
I am.
Which means that companies pay you to provide them with insight.
Apparently, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
so what sort of thing are they tending to say, Ed, sort our lives out?
Well, I mean, the team that I work with, we look predominantly at the consumer and entertainment industries. So obviously we look a lot at, all the ways in which people can watch or listen or, download entertainment, predominantly digital media. We look a lot at broadband connectivity, the sorts of devices consumers use as well. And so, those are the sorts of companies I think, you're talking about in terms of, so what are people interested in? What are they asking us about? What's kind of perhaps keeping them up at night?
It's quite handy being able to speak to an analyst, because obviously their greatest concerns are the ones that they're going to sort of pay for advice and guidance on.
Look, you alight upon a key part of, the way that we work, which is, a lot of the way in which we sort of do our research planning and organise our resources going forward is very much driven by what we're hearing from our clients. Is we constantly ask them, look, what would be useful for us to do for you? Of course, a lot of what we do is grounded in quantitative analysis, market sizing and forecasting. We do a lot of our revenues and spending, but also
I still remember those spreadsheet fun times at Strategy Analytics.
Exactly, the spreadsheet, the huge spreadsheet model. So we can bury you in all of that. To go back to your question, look, we're coming towards the end of 2018, so lots of people are kind of, their eye is kind of looking forward rather than back. They're thinking, what do we need to be preoccupied about heading into 2019? And it's not a particularly jolly end of the year, I would argue. There's a number of, we would sort of say, macroeconomic factors which are pretty negative. We look at Brexit, we look at the US-China trade tensions. And the fact that we are coming, to the end of the 10-year economic cycle after the last crash.
Right.
Smartphone.
Do we generally assume that economic cycles are roughly on that?
This has been broadly consistent throughout the 20th century.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Wait, what does that mean? That we're heading to another
peaks and troughs.
We're basically due a crash. Is what that means. So
annoying.
We focus in a little bit more on the sectors that I deal with. Smartphone sales have been leveling off. Tablets did that a few years ago. When there's a lot of anxiety around traditional pay TV. How much traditional TV are kids watching? Is it all going on demand? And a change is wrought by that. I think there's a general sense that the next kind of dramatic growth story is not readily apparent at this point in time. And so, where are we going to get our growth narratives to keep our investors and our employees excited as we head into the 2020s? So, we think about things from an entertainment perspective. Then, like next year, we're very interested in the launch of Disney Plus, their streaming service, to take on Netflix around the world. AT&T and Time Warner will also be launching one, and this is the kind of first manifestations of all the recent M&A that's been happening as well. Another huge topic for us. So we now have these huge organizations, AT&T and Time Warner, Disney, Fox, Comcast, Sky, Liberty Global, and Vodafone to an extent. And next year will be the first year where we'll see, okay, so is the logic behind these companies coming together borne out in the marketplace?
Yes.
A lot of the justification behind these transactions was because they want to scale up so they can compete more effectively with Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google.
Fangs.
Yes, exactly, which is another huge theme that we look at. We think they're an awesome competitive force. Of course they are, but
I don't see the point in competing with them there.
Yeah, I think in a broadly strategic sense, you're probably right, but if you are a huge traditional media company, it's very difficult to sort of just say, well, sod it then. We'll just spend the rest of our lives supplying content to and did you get that on camera?
Get that bleeper ready. That was just a schoolboy error from Jamie. For those of you who are just listening, Jamie's just poured coffee all over himself.
And I think you've really hit the jackpot there, Jamie, actually.
Jesus.
Have you captured all of that, Pierre? I think you've just got your promo reel right there. Jamie has an accident.
Bollocks. Looking at the telcos, I don't see. I know why they want to compete with the OTTs, but I don't see the point. Why compete when you can actually work with the OTTs? Yeah. Because I think what the brilliant thing about telcos is that they have so many assets that are critical for the OTTs. Yeah. You look at, they've got a field engineering force. Yeah. If the OTTs want to do expand into new areas, they don't have the business model which allows them to go into the physical world. They are virtual companies.
That's a fair point.
And then at the same time, you look at the retail footprint. Yeah. If you've got companies like Google moving more into hardware, it doesn't have a retail footprint, so it needs to partner with people.
Absolutely.
And this is where the telcos have got stores on every high street in the country.
Especially when you think about people like Snapchat doing their physical glasses. They could do with some help at retail by the sounds of it. But
that's not really selling those.
Jamie, I broadly agree with your point. Going head to head, competing with Facebook if you're a telco, then fair enough. But the only other thing I'd say is I think we'd have to define the question slightly more tightly, because all these companies do so many different things. What exactly are we talking about? Is it worth competing with Facebook video? That might be more viable than competing with a core social network. But it just depends what you're talking about.
I think I think traditional media companies, they're absolutely shagged. They just don't have the business model.
Yeah, so exactly the market share for things like OTT subscriptions or OTT video advertising. These are completely dominated by Facebook, YouTube, and Netflix. Yeah, essentially. 60-75% market share in many countries.
Well, we even feel it on like sort of the kind of media we do.
Yeah. Because the time spent on the platform is just.
Yeah. We're slightly insulated because we're B2B. Yeah. The sort of commercial offerings we have are quite bespoke, but for like general mainstream publications, it's a nightmare because all the advertising money is going to Facebook and Google.
Well, presumably you've got to you use like Google News and SEO to promote your articles.
Do you know it's mainly for Telecoms.com? It's mainly the newsletter actually.
Oh right.
So it is quite different, and the newsletter obviously doubles as a marketing tool. Yeah. So you're still mopping yourself up, mate.
Sponging it up.
He's soiled himself. And so a bit of a tangent there. So we're slightly insulated, but on the whole, a hell of a lot of industries are disrupted by the fact that all the cash has gone to those big platforms.
Digital media. You'll probably look at it slightly more later when you're talking a little bit about some of the regulatory attention that these companies are getting. I mean, one of the predictions that I and my colleagues made was this year, looking into 2019, was when people ask us what is the greatest threat that the FANGs face, we think it's overwhelmingly governments and regulators.
Yeah. Well, you can see
commercial
momentum
threat
still
is
shift in that direction now. I mean, in Australia, they just had the what was, I can't remember what it was called.
The ACC or something.
The ACCC is
that's it. Yes.
the Australian and it's
the
the competition watchdog essentially.
Right.
And they're looking at. They just released a new report, and it's essentially targeting Facebook and Google about how much of an influence that they have on society. They're essentially saying, you guys aren't curators anymore. You're not standoffish. You have too much of an influence on society to be regulated in this way.
That's we're gonna when we talk about the last thing on this pod, that's gonna go full circle, because we'll definitely get onto that again. No, but you're right, and actually in the broader sort of regulatory environment, what tends to happen, and this tends to happen with tech companies much more than any other type, is if you get too big, even if you've done it completely legitimately just by out competing, you get to a certain size, different rules apply to you, because you're basically a monopoly, or you're a near monopoly. Well, too big to fail, but also too big to allow competition. So then you get people like the European Commission cracking down on. They did it with Microsoft, did it with Intel, they've been doing it with Google. It's just going to happen because they've got too much reach.
I mean, I think there is an interesting pattern which sort of relates to what you're saying, which is, a lot of the most exciting and, innovative new technologies which pop up, it will instantly get swallowed by one of the current digital giants. And, sort of Instagram pops up, we'll take that. You see it now with a lot of the technology development around automated vehicles or self-driving cars. This is all being driven by a handful of organizations. You can probably count on less than two hands around the world. And so, I think there are potentially interesting discussions to be had. Is this the best model for technology development? I mean, but I'm sure I'm sure the likes of Google or what they've done in AI and goodness knows how many areas would say it's a good one.
So bringing it back to what we started talking about, which is the sort of big M&A. So basically, your world and our world, the Venn diagram's increasingly overlapping, isn't it? Because big telcos are buying big entertainment companies. And the thinking behind it is, for them, is just sort of scale and a degree of diversification and that sort of thing.
I think so. Yeah. I think so. I mean, scale is important in content distribution, especially if you're licensing content from other people or acquiring content from other people. So you drive down your content costs on a per audience member or subscriber basis. That's long been the case. We seem now to be marrying, the distribution networks, whether they be cellular networks or satellite networks or cable networks, and the people who make and aggregate the content itself. We constantly say this is an unproven hypothesis. We don't know if this is going to work. So this is why I think that the next few years are going to be very interesting. But it's going to get more competitive rather than less. There'll be more services competing for your attention and your spending next year. And then we're constantly asking ourselves how many services, how many video apps, how many subscriptions.
So how many do you subscribe to? I presume professionally you kind of have to subscribe to a lot.
For a start, I'll say I'm not at all a representative anything apart from being a representative analyst, which is about as unrepresentative of anything meaningful that I can think of. Look, I would summarise my media consumption habits by saying I'm basically a sports nut.
Right.
So I have pay TV and all the sports options.
Right.
Because that's what I
So
really
you have
like to
both
watch.
BT and Sky?
Yeah. Enthusiastic customer.
How much your bill per month?
It's three figures. But,
Jesus.
No, but that's broadband, all TV, and I've got all the bells and whistles. I mean,
you
I
get
don't
all the boxes and the TV.
Yeah. And
and he doesn't have any dependents and has obscene disposable income.
I'm going to have to take issue with this one. I wish someone would tell my boss this. But
I've got two. I got Prime and Netflix, and that's already enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say.
I got TV
and I got
as well.
BT. But
I do have some of the
TV.
well-known video subscriptions, not wishing to favour or disfavour anyone.
Does Freeview count?
Well, you're not paying for it, are you?
Freeview.
Yeah, but it's
we're talking about premium stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, yeah.
Try and keep up here.
I mean, it depends. Look, it depends. It depends what you want. Look, in a family household like yours, Scott, I'm sure there are many and more diverse viewing needs than than myself, which is just can I watch every single sporting event that might be on in the world at this point?
But it's funny, we've chatted about it on the pod. I mean, how kids, compared to a generation ago, how kids go about sort of video entertainment is just utterly different.
Yeah,
Izzy's just YouTube the whole time.
Nothing's live.
And then we've got
I watch very rarely watch
broadcast
linear TV.
You're not representative.
No.
But no, look. I mean, to go back to your point about Izzy and YouTube. I mean, we've recently done quite a lot of work around kids IP, and trying to sort of evaluate the opportunities available for people who might own a really strong catalogue of kids shows, or who make some interesting series. And the YouTube is just now such a huge feature in kids' viewing time.
Yeah.
And it's not just in the UK. When we look at some of the evolving markets around the world, the pattern is the same. It's hard to understate.
Did you hear about
the level and the scope?
And there's another near monopoly
influence.
Did you hear about the YouTube Rewind fiasco?
Yeah.
Well, fiasco in so much as the most downvoted video of the year.
10 million dislikes.
And I was actually watching a YouTube video on the matter, and apparently it's because and it's all getting a bit meta, isn't it?
Yeah,
Justin Bieber's fans mobilised.
Is it? Because he was the most hated video prior to that.
Okay.
One of his videos was
sure, but the video is already better.
But it was the second most, and then there was something like 5 million sort of like down dislikes. Over for the last
down
week
on YouTube.
Thumbs down.
Thumbs down. So my understanding, Pierre, I don't know if it's yours, is one of the reasons it was so hated is because they actually, in their sort of summary of the YouTube year, went to a lot of sort of mainstream rather than YouTubers.
They also missed the marks. Like some of the ideas probably look good on page, but didn't translate at all.
I haven't actually watched the video.
It's too long.
It's 10 minutes. It's way too long.
Yeah,
isn't it?
and it's very. It's like a commercial for
YouTube.
Yeah, for YouTube.
Yeah,
advertisers like look,
And exactly. And that video I saw is they were saying they were trying to make it incredibly advertiser friendly.
John Oliver is on there, and he's not a YouTuber.
Right.
Yeah, and like the Daily Show and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they share clips. I mean, in that sense, it's kind of YouTube's used for marketing. But when you think of YouTube, it's like it's almost not worth sort of analysing it in the traditional sense, like another video platform. Our base assumption is just that everyone uses YouTube, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Yeah. And that all video ever produced will at some point end up on YouTube.
Yeah.
There's never been anything else like it. So when we think about when we speak to companies who are trying to compete for online video advertising revenue or market share, then it's just like, okay, YouTube's going to take this much. How much is left over for everyone else to compete for? Yeah. And it's getting smaller over time, even though the overall market is rising. So I'm
just wondering, Pierre, how you're going to deal with the audio of the sound of Jamie dabbing his crotch throughout the whole
it sounds like
podcast.
we're at the beach.
It sounds like the waves breaking on the shore.
It could be one of those mystery things. Can you tell us what this sound is?
So that the BBC sound effects department.
Exactly. So before we move on from your core stuff, Ed, we were chatting a little bit beforehand that you said you've got a lot of your clients asking you about 5G, which is obviously a sort of core thing of ours. Why are your clients asking about 5G?
Okay, so I mean, look, if we go back to what we were saying earlier about it's not readily apparent where the next big interesting growth stories are going to come from. I mean, certainly there is a reasonable level of expectation that 5G related technology developments, might well present the next great growth narrative for the telco, possibly the entertainment industries as well.
Right.
So
which is what with a view to sort of high def streaming and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, people are experimenting with use cases. I think Intel, Verizon, and some other gigantic corporations, the Amdocs we can throw in there, all have kind of ongoing initiatives trialing, internal labs trialing and testing all of these things. And look, we've seen the first few deployments around the world of the first 5G capable networks, and that's something we'll expect. The first 5G handset I think in second half of 2019.
No, first half.
Already. Oh, first half is it now?
Half, yeah.
Oh yeah, there was that event. Was it Qualcomm's event where they announced that? I think.
Yeah, and various.
They're pretty much all going first half now. I think
Right.
The first one come out is going to be either LG or
Samsung.
No, Motorola.
Oh,
really?
Motorola have got a partnership with Verizon to launch in the first half of next year.
We saw some quite cool devices in Rome, didn't we, Pierre?
Yeah, yeah. The devices.
They're out now. The
Modems.
fixed wireless access.
Yeah, exactly.
And the hotspots.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. So they're around.
They're around, but yeah, it's the antennas in these phones that
yeah.
fixed.
Well, I mean, I think look, if you're hoping to make a buck from 5G, you've got to start planning now, and so that's what's driving a lot of the consulting that we're doing.
This is the problem, though, is that no one really knows. I mean, it's exactly the same in the 4G world. I mean, you can't really predict.
No, you're right.
Where you're going to make money, because who would have thought before 4G in 2011, 2010. Before 4G was even being thought about or being implemented, who would have thought Uber would be the biggest sort of like transport company on the planet? It's very much a case of give them the tools and then they'll create the next big idea.
Agree.
But I mean, so there will be a fortune to be made off 5G.
Totally agree.
But I think it's something we're not even thinking about nowadays.
I mean, you're probably right.
I was asking Phil Harvey in Lisbon, because I genuinely have no idea. I was asking, how do you think AT&T and maybe LG are going to market to the average Joe? This is why you need 5G.
Yeah,
and
no one knows it, Mo.
Well, he said
there was an interesting bit of research which showed that something like only 40% of people are actually aware of the guys on the street are actually aware of what 5G is and why it's coming and when it's coming. It's really, really low market awareness at the moment.
I agree.
So do you want to know what he said or not?
Go on. What did he say?
No, he said the only thing he could think of was
he said shut up and point the camera at something.
A commercial this guy's waiting for the bus or the train or whatever, and oh my god, he has to download a movie in 3 seconds. I was like, wow. I mean, I guess that's the only
not the
thing.
biggest pain point, is it?
No, but even though that's the only reason.
Yeah. I think
get 5G
the biggest
to download, really.
The biggest case for me at the moment is the profitability for the telcos.
Yeah,
you're straining the networks.
The network economics.
More expensive to get data to the consumer, and it's becoming more. And we're asking for more data all the time. Yeah, but if you can transmit data at a tenth of the cost, nowadays you can keep tariffs at a lower level and make money.
Well, that's why the 5G marketing to consumers is really tough, because it's actually not a very consumer technology.
No, if the marketing of 5G is that it's going to be faster than 4G, then nothing's going to happen.
Because you don't need it.
The entire thing will fail.
Everything loads as fast as it can already.
If the marketing is one more G.
Yeah. So look, obviously there's more bandwidth, there's more data throughput possible. There's very low lag, very low latency.
Yeah.
So some of the things that they're looking at in labs. So obviously AR applications, which might need a huge amounts of data accessible very, very quickly, is one case that they're looking at. VR as well, which has to be very responsive.
Otherwise you end up throwing up all over yourself. Making a mess of yourself like Jamie did.
And
by the way, I really enjoyed my whole cup of coffee that I had. It was. Give me a real spring in my step.
It's that last third that really makes the difference.
Well, you're talking about VR. In Rome, there was a cool demo of split VR. I had never heard of it before.
Right.
Where instead of having a backpack with a computer, computer is wirelessly streaming to a phone. Yeah. And that's it. There's no sensors, nothing. Yeah, I mean, cool. All those sorts of things, and anything which is remote controlled, which needs low latency, they look at pretty closely. So it's not going to be anytime soon. But remote vehicles, remote surgery, those are amongst the kind of more space-age things that they're kind of looking at.
Weren't we joking about combining the autonomous vehicle with the remote surgery?
I said there should be an ambulance.
Well, then maybe you'd have a totally automated, ambulance thing.
Or you could have something where you have a car crash and it just puts you back together again.
Right.
I mean, the good thing about it from a medical perspective is, I agree, not having a robot to do surgery in the ambulance, but having like a video suite in there, so you can actually consult A&E doctors. You know, you can put the patient in front of the camera. The doctor can see.
But you can do that now, like FaceTime, whatever. Like fancier FaceTime.
Yeah, but then you could integrate other sort of sensors and that sort of thing, make it a much more comprehensive exchange.
Video conferencing is still a bit laggy and stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, there are things which are improved and there are things which are enabled. I mean, certainly video streaming is something that would be improved, and you'd be able to do it more reliably at bigger scale. This is not the sexiest thing you can say to a consumer, though. I mean,
no, it's not. It's not for the consumers, really, though. It's for industry,
which is why it's going to be a nightmare for people trying to market it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends. Though it depends where you are. If you look at the
consumer marketing, I mean,
there's enterprise and consumer use cases. The consumer marketing will be a chat. Look, a lot of I think, but the mobile operators tend to be pretty good at launching new technologies. You know, what can I say?
Yeah.
We have a lot of faith. But anyway, go back to your original point. If this is gonna be anywhere near the level of impact that a lot of people are talking about, suspect it might be, then you've got to start making your bets now.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
Working out what's going to work, what's not.
We need to tell people.
Do. Yeah, there is.
I mean,
that as well,
first and foremost, I mean, I haven't seen anything on the TV about 5G. And if you're going to be launching commercial networks, because did EE said they're going to be 2019?
Yeah,
2020.
Yeah, I think
so.
Yeah,
I mean, they're doing bits and bobs already.
Yeah, they had the trial at Wembley.
Yeah, they got the load of trials in East London as well. You've got to tell people, and I'm not seeing enough in consumer press to actually tell people what you're doing.
Well, I mean, so like Apple have said that they'll probably sit out the first wave. Of,
I think that's
5G.
very sensible.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's historically what they've done, and look, Apple's a volume player. It doesn't want to sell. You know what I mean? If it's it's going to wait till this technology is truly at the scale
mass market penetration. Yeah.
So I think they're usually a relatively good barometer for true mass consumer adoption levels. Really. So.
I mean, the big issue I find is the great thing about Apple is that they're going to figure out what all the problems are.
Yeah.
The first smartphone launches, which are 5G capable, are going to be rubbish.
Yeah,
because they're
sketchy. Or something,
they're rushing to market to be the first out there. Yeah. And all of a sudden, you're going to realise afterwards that this isn't a very good product. Yeah. And then the second releases of these smartphones.
Yeah. Well, Apple's not going to get there anytime soon because it's not using Qualcomm because they don't like each other.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, we better move it along. Yeah. So. The other two things I want to chat about, we just happened to, Jamie and I have had a sort of productive few weeks when we're not soiling ourselves with reads our most read stories of the year have happened in December.
Spectacular.
And one of them, it was written by me, but it was mainly collating a bunch of stuff Jamie had written about. This is credit where it's due. But I think the headline probably appealed to some people, and the headline was something along the lines of Nokia has a great week by simply not screwing anything up. And the point was that its two main competitors had nightmare weeks, so all it needed to do was keep its head down, and it's having a great week.
Three. What? ZTE got itself in trouble with the
yes,
US
again? Yeah, with the Venezuela thing.
Yeah,
and
then obviously.
So you tell us. So I mean, tell us first. So first we got the Huawei stuff. So this was all breaking while Pierre and I were in Lisbon. So you were covering it all.
Yeah. So
give us the lowdown on Huawei's stuff.
Basically, they arrest the CFO got arrested. She was in transit from Mexico. She was going through Canada and on the way back to Hong Kong. So I'm assuming Shenzhen, but you can just jump across the river from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And she just got nicked. And she's been released on bail. I think I'm really surprised. I think she's a massive flight risk, so I'm really surprised.
I think her bail was kind of dozens of millions of dollars. So
nonetheless,
she's such a high-profile figure.
The Chinese already locked up a Canadian guy.
Former diplomats.
Two? Oh wow!
Not even a current diplomat. It was former diplomats.
Right.
So this is the big thing now.
So getting a bit tit for tat. Yeah.
But they nicked her, and she's now. I think she had to put up her various houses in Canada. But she is and then she quoted the fact that she's gone through various rounds of chemotherapy for for cancer. I don't know what type.
And
of
she's
cancer.
the daughter of the founder. Extra layer.
Yeah.
But that was the grounds. So she's saying, I this is affecting my health because I can't eat properly the food that you're giving me. So
that was all in the bail hearing.
Yeah,
and it succeeded because she got bail.
Yeah, she got bail, and I still think she's a massive flight risk.
Right.
You know, she's got no ties to Canada,
except for her houses in Vancouver.
Yeah, but she's probably got God knows how many houses all over the place.
There's
Who
a
hasn't
huge
got a house in
Chinese
Vancouver,
community in Vancouver, and I imagine that it wouldn't be too beneficial for Huawei's huge ongoing operations in Canada if she were to disappear.
No, it's a tasty thing. Did you?
But she's facing up to 30 years in prison.
Yeah, I
mean, you recall what she's been charged with?
Facilitating
sanctions busting was the suspicion, I think, wasn't it?
So basically there was a company, so it's fraud of US banking institutions. So basically she misled banking institutions about how much of an involvement Huawei has with this company Skycom.
There we go.
Which is it supposedly a third party, but for all intents and purposes it looks part of the Huawei.
And Skycom
family.
does business in Iran.
It sells kit to Iran.
What's funny is that one guy in the White House said, like, I don't know, this press secretary or something, he said that has nothing to do with the trade war, but Trump did say, I would release her if that would help.
It's getting really
well,
messy.
I read that. I read Trump say he's trying to get involved, but then the people who nicked her or got her arrested are all going, this has got nothing to do with trade. Yeah. So this is the thing. It's the immediate narrative
on
for
the
me.
Same day.
It's not the White House that have called for this, though. It's the New York
Justice
Attorney General, and the New York Attorney General hates Trump. really, really hates Trump. Really hates pie. Really hates. It's basically New York is essentially one of the districts which is constantly suing the FCC, trying to implement net neutrality. They're on polar opposite end of the scale from the Republicans.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of come at the the end of a long period of sort of bad news flow for Huawei, really, especially around the sort of government concerns around the world around security and
because they've just had Japan crack down on them.
Well, it just seems to be every few days there's another country which comes out negatively, and I mean, you just think if there was, I'm always very keen to see the smoking gun. Like, look, if there is hardware hacking going on, if there is this stuff going on around networking equipment, there must be is there not someone somewhere that can find a circuit board and go?
The list is starting to grow now, though, isn't it? Because I think what was Taiwan is looking to extend its ban.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. So, depending on, depending on sort of, if there could be a sort of this dual track of 5G network development, one going on in China, kind of isolated from what's going on in the rest of the world. If
100%,
if they can't sort out these,
especially with the European Commission making bad noises as well.
Exactly.
Because what's his name, Ansip, turned around and he said, we should be fearful of Huawei and other Chinese companies. So that's not looking very good.
Huawei's massively reliant on a number of American suppliers as well.
Oh, so, huge. Not quite as dependent as ZTE, but there's so much IP in Silicon Valley that just cannot be replicated elsewhere.
Exactly. So,
but I'm with you. Like, can someone show the actual
There
evidence?
is no proof.
Show me the evidence.
Show me the evidence.
Otherwise, I mean, otherwise, it is guilty until proven innocent in this case.
It does seem that seems to be the case.
Yeah. Very much so. And I think it's, the way things are going. Yeah. One market which should be absolutely ruining itself at the moment is Germany.
Right.
Germany is lagging, shall we say, on the connectivity scales.
Yeah.
You look at, we're about to go into the 5G world, and there's still huge portions of the
Bavarian countryside.
You can't get 4G.
Like 1G. I mean, look, the other thing, so look, you think about China as a market. Obviously, it's a huge market. China has spent the last few years, heavily investing in putting cells everywhere, transitioning 4G to 5G capable networks. They've been doing it for ages. The rate of development for Chinese mobile applications and services is faster than anything I've ever seen in the West. Yeah. The pace their ecosystems develop, Tencent,
they've densified the network.
Exactly. So the way that these services and innovations evolve technologically, commercially, in China's cellular industry is way faster. So if it does split off, then to be honest, I think it's a good chance the rest of the world that will be suffering to an extent by not being exposed to all the great things that are happening there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It was undeniably a retrograde step to be developing 2 different next generation mobile infrastructures.
Well, I mean, but I mean, you say it's a bad thing. Yeah. But I mean, ultimately, it's not if you're the European Commission. And
well,
it's not if you're the
US government. You are correct. I mean, I seem to be minimising the security concerns, which a lot of people,
I mean, not
presumably who have much better visibility than me. But
I don't even mean. I mean, from a security side of things, completely get it. But at the same time, if they can shut out the Chinese,
this is commercially and competitively,
it makes them a lot of sense.
No, I can well understand it.
Silicon Valley's sort of grip on the world is really, really starting to loosen a bit here. I mean. This is, I mean,
not all bits of the world, as we'll come to.
Well, I mean, one of the interesting reports I read the other day, I think it was PwC that put out their report, and it was sort of like the state of affairs in European tech. It wasn't PwC. I don't know why I said that. I don't know what the name of it. It was some venture capitalist firm.
You just dreamt it.
But they basically said that there's 5,700 professional developers, or I can't remember. No, 5.7 million professional developers across Europe.
Right.
Whereas there's only 4.4 million in the US.
Wow.
So Europe is actually, I mean, it's got the tools to actually take, to wrestle some of the control away from Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
The only issue is, and this didn't go in, they didn't mention this in the report, how many of those European developers actually work for companies like Facebook or Google and are contributing to the US economy. That remains to be seen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Silicon Valley giants have been putting software engineers, around the world. I mean, Google, Facebook, and Apple have pretty significant European development operations.
I mean, you can see it down here. Google's got. Is it Google or Facebook?
The horizontal skyscraper or whatever by King's Cross. That's Google, isn't it?
Google, yeah. And I think they've got a sales office and an engineering office on Goode Street as well, don't they?
Yeah, no, they've got. I'm sure they've got one near
Tottenham
Court Road. Yeah. They've got another office there as well. So
Okay, I'm gonna steer it onto the next thing. So Nokia would have been pretty happy with the misfortunes of Huawei, but then the icing on the cake was that Ericsson dropped the ball as well. And again, you were
wonderful.
You were covering that, Jamie. What screw up happened there?
I can't remember what the exact software was, but basically there's a couple of nodes. There's software attached to a couple of nodes in core networks around the world, and the license expired. Essentially, the license expired.
Simple as that.
And it crashed. I've heard rumours. I've been speaking to various people across the week.
Doing a bit of proper journalism
off the record.
Crikey.
And I've heard that there's actually 20 customers that were impacted to varying degrees.
Now, around the world.
Now, if you actually look at O2, O2's network basically collapsed. Just completely destroyed. They seem to be the worst impacted. SoftBank seems to be very similar. If you actually look at the data, their network crashed almost as badly. It was fractionally. There was a bit more roaming data on the SoftBank network. Mobiphone in Vietnam also crashed very heavily at exactly the same time. And I've got a few companies looking into the data performance on various networks at the moment, so hopefully I'll be able to grow that list. But basically, Ericsson screw up, shut down X amount of networks around the world.
And what are the ongoing implications for Ericsson?
About 100 million by the sounds of it.
Right, in terms of compensation.
It must be written into their various service level agreements, or
presumably.
But it's interesting. So it was a single point of failure, as they say, was enough to bring down entire networks. I mean, that's like
a bit of a weak link in the chain.
Exactly.
two bits of software, and the license expired in one of the source code.
Jaw dropping, isn't it?
It literally crashed everything. Yeah. So you got to wonder. Yeah, I mean, this is something that Gabe said, one of the heavy reading analysts.
Right.
He said, you got to question how effective the O2 network architecture is.
There aren't any fail-safes for that.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. So basically, the long and short of that was that by virtue of those two things, Nokia had a great week, and that just happened to be a story that got a lot of reads, maybe within Nokia, having their little bit of Schadenfreude. there.
Maybe Nokia people are actually more magnanimous and were very sorry to see their competitors having such a hard time.
I don't think you believe that for 1 second, Ed. And I certainly don't. Oh no, I've had plenty of times where I've spoken to companies that sort of like to subtly brief against each other.
I see.
They will love it.
I'm sure.
And then just when we thought we hit our sort of reads target, I wrote up a story which was actually a self-indulgence. It wasn't even really a telecom story.
Yeah.
The headline was the Silicon Valley Inquisition gathers pace.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm obviously making a sort of reference to the Spanish Inquisition. And the point being that there's a degree of sort of censoriousness, puritanism, sort of blacklisting going on of primarily just sort of independent content producers or creators, as they call them on YouTube. And it seems to be more on sort of one side of the political divide. So people who will characterise themselves as liberals or free speech advocates or all that sort of thing.
Sure.
They seem to be the ones that are getting in trouble. Now, the reason this is chilling, and everyone goes, when you bring this up, everyone goes, yeah, well, they're private companies, they can do what they want, they don't have to, and that's totally true. Yeah. But where it gets dodgy was twofold. Why are you making obscene gestures at Pierre?
Why not?
Okay, fine.
What?
There's just no discipline, Ed.
You can in a minute.
I just want to see your phone, the back of it.
Right.
He smashed it.
Oh, I smashed that.
He didn't know.
You didn't realise you'd smashed your phone?
No.
Oh dear, you're not having a great day. Maybe it was last night.
I don't believe you didn't know you'd smashed your phone.
Yeah, no, I just discovered that now.
Maybe it was last night. Okay. So there's two reasons why it's a bit dodgy. Firstly, they are sort of near monopolists when it comes to the sort of public forums.
Sphere, yeah.
You know, there's no real competitor for Twitter
YouTube.
in the area of Twitter.
Yeah.
And there's certainly not many viable competitors for YouTube and so on.
PayPal.
So if they do start behaving in a censorious way, then it does have big implications. And then the other thing that's dodgy about it, which I focused on more in the piece, is what seems to be very inconsistent applications of their own terms and conditions. Right. Yes, if they say you're not allowed to swear and someone swears, then they kick them off. That's fine. Yeah. But if they leave some people on who do swear and some people don't, then it starts to look like it might be ideologically motivated. And the reason this one came to a head, and the reason I got so many reads, is because this one commentator who calls himself a classic liberal, who goes by the name of Sargon of Akkad on YouTube, got chucked off a platform called Patreon. Yeah. And Patreon is where a lot of people like them get their money. Yeah. So it's a different model. It's not ad funded. You basically I've got a couple of Patreon, people that you just want to support them. So I just there's a couple of YouTubers I chuck $10 a month. Yeah. And Sargon was on about 100 grand a year or something on Patreon. Wow. And they just chucked him on. So they just unilaterally robbed him of 100 grand. Yeah. So that seems quite arbitrary. And the reason it got so many reads is I embedded a tweet by quite a well-known chap called Jordan Peterson in the story. And he's quite into freedom of speech and all that sort of thing. Yeah. And then on Wednesday, when me and Pierre were in Rome doing a bit of filming with Qualcomm, I saw that this story was getting quite a lot of traffic, and I wasn't sure why, because when I write these sort of self-indulgent, Scott finds it interesting, but it's got bugger all to do with telecoms pieces, I don't necessarily expect them to get tons of reads. And then I went and looked into the sort of Google Analytics, and one thing led to another, and I saw that Jordan Peterson had retweeted it. Wow. So I was like, whoa. And so we can say that the effect of just one retweet from a very prominent person does have a massive effect on the reads. Yeah. So it basically in one day became our most read story of the year.
Well, I'm sure many of the points you made will also have resonated with people. I mean, I think you mentioned the digital platforms and the implications that their behaviour has. I mean, such as the sort of embrace on pretty much every aspect of our lives. I think such scrutiny is justified and is important to have a discussion about. I mean, the other thing about many of these platforms you're talking about is if they do start seemingly picking and choosing, who gets to use their platform, then you get close to editorializing, and you start losing your common carrier status, where you can basically be like, I'm like a road or the post office. If someone does something bad on me, then
it's not my fault.
But then if you start saying, okay, we're going to get rid of those people because of this or that, then I mean, I think you start jeopardising that, and you start. But
I agree.
It's a difficult thing.
I think if regulators start designating them as publishers rather than just platforms, that changes everything.
I think it's a critical discussion to be had. I mean, the wider impact of digital platforms or social networks on elections or the conduct of liberal democracy in general.
I mean, as soon as
this is a discussion we'll be having for a long time.
All that Cambridge Analytica stuff. All that sort of thing.
I mean, there's just very generally. I mean, how does say something seemingly anodyne like YouTube's recommendation algorithm impact, how people think once they start disappearing down various rabbit holes. I read a fascinating article the other day about how the flat earther movement has been is at its strongest that it's been in years,
right?
Because their capability to recruit it's just through social networks, and also the various rabbit holes on the tube sites where people would be like, so the moon landings are fake, and then the recommendations basically get more and more hats.
Well, it's an echo chamber, isn't it? It's just an absolute. It's an echo chamber.
Yeah.
It's just.
But
getting louder and louder.
I don't think we've worked out to any meaningful degree, how these things affect us all, our political discourse, and the way that we might subsequently behave in elections. And until we sort that out, then you could argue that it's I mean, governments and regulators need to get their skates on.
And there are sort of a couple of other interesting things there. Like, so I'm not completely unsympathetic towards the platforms because they do get a lot of pressure from governments to sort of censor or to curate or whatever.
Sure.
But they don't do themselves any favours because Silicon Valley is a very in the States they don't use left and right so much as liberal and conservative.
Sure.
And it's a very liberal. Politically liberal place,
coastal.
So their their natural echo chamber, or if they were to allow their natural biases to come through, they would probably favour liberal commentators and disfavour conservative ones, and that's what a lot of people. I don't have any. I can't say it's definitely true, but there's certainly anecdotal evidence to support that. So but they are in a tricky situation. I think how it will probably conclude is that some regulator will make a point of saying, unless you're a lot more rigorous, transparent and even-handed about how you enforce your terms and conditions, then we're going to designate you a publisher, and then you're in all sorts of bother. And I think their hand's going to have to be forced. The question there remains how powerful their lobbying is to stop that stuff happening, because of course they're not short of a bob.
Well, very
those
true.
Silicon Valley dudes.
The Silicon Valley platforms reflecting Silicon Valley political priorities is about as natural a thing as you could expect. It would be another sign of American hegemony over the rest of the world, I guess.
I want to talk to Jamie just so that Pierre's got a reason to put the camera on him, because he's almost entirely lying down now, which is quite funny. But yes, other than just giving us an excuse to go look at Jamie, he's knackered. Did you have before we wrap it up? You have got any more thoughts on this sort of digital platform stuff and the censorship and whether they're publishers and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is the big issue that I find with governments and regulations is that I don't think there should be I don't think you should try and classify them as as publishers because they're not. They are increasingly taking on publisher roles, but they're not publishers. This is the entire problem with the idea of everyone's talking about an unfair playing field between the telcos and the OTTs. Governments are trying to dictate telco-orientated rules to the OTTs, and it simply doesn't work. If you try and dictate publisher rules to the OTTs, it's going to fail again. So this is the problem with government. They're building new legislation on top of the foundation which has existed in the previous generations. Now, you have to create something new because this is a new segment. It's not technology, it's not telcos, it's not media, it's not publishing. OTT is a completely new beast. Therefore, you should have regulations which are specific to these guys. That's the
so there's a third thing. There's platforms, there's publishers, and there's a third thing, which is what they are. And it needs a whole new set of rules and regulations.
I mean, I strongly agree. I agree with you, Ed, that there does need to be a stronger handle on the technology on these OTTs. There needs to be more rules to keep them in line and to dictate the way that they act. But trying to force publisher rules or telco rules or technology rules onto this new segment isn't going to work. But they do need to be more strongly regulated.
We need a new class of rule.
Yeah, basically, I think so.
Right, so that's going to be an interesting thing.
They were platforms back when there was no advertising, no sponsoring, no boosting of posts possible.
Yeah,
then that was truly just a platform.
Yeah.
Like Facebook when it came out was just a wall.
Yeah,
exactly.
YouTube when it was just, and then the 5-second skip happened.
Yeah.
Back then, they were true platforms, but now
they've evolved into something new.
Yeah.
And and rules have to evolve as well to make sure that you can govern them.
Absolutely.
I mean, did they try? when oil started to get drilled out of the sea, did they try and regulate these offshore oil companies in the same way as they did onshore oil companies? No, they put new safety standards in. They put different sort of requirements on it.
Sure.
BP maybe didn't get that memo.
Yeah. But there is entirely different. There's entirely different rules, and that's exactly. And I think the issue is that governments don't understand how to do it.
Yeah.
So they can't do it. I mean, fundamentally, the only people that understand how Silicon Valley works are the people in Silicon Valley.
True.
And you got legislators who come from traditional industry,
poorly paid civil servants. In the main.
Trying to do it, trying to get.
It's a bit like regulating financial institutions or whatever.
And we saw what a great job of that they did a decade ago.
Exactly.
Back to your cycle.
Exactly.
Maybe the next catastrophe will come from Silicon Valley. And I think, just to round that one off, I think the only way this stuff gets resolved normally.
On that jolly note.
Yes. It normally gets sorted out through litigation, and I think someone like Sargon of Akkad, who's just been robbed of over £100,000 a year, at least through that method. I mean, I would have thought, and I've seen no indication he's going to do this, but I would have thought he'd have quite a strong legal case. And it's all very well Patreon going, well, in our rules it says you can't be horrid.
Yeah.
But they're still taking a bunch of cash away from him. And that's when lawyers start getting involved. And I think that will probably start setting the precedent when people get sued.
Significant amount of money as well. So it's worth probably him. He's probably thinking of every potential legal remedy available to him.
And he'll have all these other people like Jordan Peterson backing him up as well.
Yeah.
So it could get tasty.
Yeah, very much.
Cool.
So.
All right. So thanks a lot for coming in, Ed. That was good fun. Sorry, me and Jamie were slightly below par due to an inability to go home at a decent hour.
Always.
And Jamie, your spillage is more or less gone.
Well, the thing is, I don't want to walk through because where we sit in the office,
coffee
is miles away. It's right at the back of the room.
And
nobody will see you
walking down the catwalk.
When it happened, it looked exactly like you slashed yourself. So that's not a look that you wanted to carry through the office, I presume.
Just take your shirt off.
Distract them.
So on that unsavoury note, thanks a lot for listening, and have a happy Christmas and New Year, and we'll see you in the New Year. Cheers.
Thanks very much. Merry Christmas, everyone.